And I went to school, I was born here, and I went to school here all my school years. And what was so funny, we wanted to play basketball, but we didn't have any place to play except on the dirt court north of the schoolhouse. And the superintendent come out there with a chalk and drew off a basketball court, and that's how we played basketball. Of course, you couldn't cross the line. You had 3 on one side, 3 on the other. And then my daddy was on the school board, and he told them, said, if you all will let us build a gym, I'll haul all the rock off of my ranch in here for you, and I'll get some boys to rock it and build a gym. And so finally the school board, first they didn't want to, but finally they decided, and then they organized the WPA, and they said, well, they'd come do the cement work. So they came and cemented all of that gymnasium. And we thought, oh, that was, I guess, in 36 or 37. We thought we were in high cotton. We had a gym to play in. And then when we went into World War, my goodness, it was a mess. And they give you stamps. That's the only way you could get a pound of butter. You had to have a stamp. You had to have a stamp to get 5 pounds of sugar, and a stamp to get 5 gallons of gas. And tires, you couldn't buy tires for your car. And finally, somebody in Abilene started a black market, and they said you could go buy a tire up there, but said it's probably $50. Well, wouldn't anybody pay $50 for a tire? That's too high. Yeah, and the taxes, everybody paid their taxes. They'd come and want your taxes. Everybody paid their taxes and just did without something else.
Come election time, the big deal was that you came to the courthouse at night and sweated the election returns. And that's a term that probably a lot of folks is not familiar with, but that's what they used to call it. Everyone sweated the returns. And what they do, they just wait till the boxes came in and somebody would be watching and said, here comes a Putnam box. And they'd have a big blackboard up there and they'd write all the votes down on it for the different candidates, how many votes they'd have. And then that's why, well, here comes the offering boxes coming in now. So they'd do a lot of racing and changing the numbers. But that's how you found out who was elected. Otherwise, it would be days maybe before you ever found out how the elections turned out.
You know, everything just got out of hand there for a while, and it was black market, oh my. And you couldn't buy anything for the house. You couldn't buy sheets. And of course then, all of us in high school was wearing silk hose. Well, you couldn't buy silk hose because they used that silk for the parachutes. And you couldn't buy makeup, and they finally started a makeup in a bottle, and you could paint that on your legs and it looked like you had hose on. And there's 50 cents a bottle, and everybody thought, oh, how high that is. Said, that's higher than a pair of hose. But oh, there was lots of hard times back then, but I guess it was good for kids. Everybody lived through it. And that like to ruin us. Camp Barkley come down here, and you couldn't come to town on Saturday because all those soldiers is in town drunk. And they'd put them in jail, and on Monday morning, Camp Barkley would send 3 buses down here at the jail and get all the soldiers and take them back to Camp Barkley. Oh my, it was a mess. And boy, we soon had an election pretty quick and voted Bear out.
1962, I had already been in the highway patrol about 4 years, and they assigned me here as a highway patrolman. And at that time, I did a lot of business with the county clerk's office, filing DWI cases and stuff of that nature. And her office had really become modern at that time. She had a copy machine. Prior to that, it was all typewriters with up to half a dozen carbon copies, and none of them you could read. But she had this new machine that took up at least half of her office. And when she'd crank that thing up, it'd sound like a cotton gin. That was a very noisy apparatus, but it made copies.
Yeah, we used to come up here with Daddy and go in the courthouse, and on the west side, when you come up to it, you could go down steps, and you could walk all the way around it, and it had a huge bank up on the side of it. I don't know what that was for. It looked like it would have helped water, but it might not have. And then they had some steps where you could come up in the courthouse. And Mr. Connor had, I don't know whether they told you, Mr. Connor, when you came in the front door, well, he had a little stand there, and he sold bars of candy, chewing gum, and Maud Hart was his daughter that married Fred Hart here. Well, then when they tore the courthouse down and rebuilt it, well, he was in here too. And then when we built this new one, well, everybody was worrying about the woman standing out there, and they didn't know where they were going to put her on this. And some of them said, well, they didn't like this courthouse. It was just too square. It wasn't pretty like the old one. But we soon got used to the courthouse, and it was fine.
Well, as we would never want to be known as the person who sold our land, you know, we wouldn't want to be the generation who doesn't take care of things that we've been given, such as the courthouse or the train station, the little town that goes down through the middle from the courthouse to the train station. All that's valuable. They're a part of the history of Callahan County. And
I had a funny situation that happened here. One of the Abilene Highway patrolmen stopped a car out here that had, from Alabama, had two old characters in it, and they had a load of dope in it. We put them in the jail here, and time went by. They were indicted, and then they were tried, and they both wanted jury trials. So that particular day of the trial, the district attorney selected two juries and sent one jury home and said, be back at 1 o'clock this afternoon. We'll be ready for you by then. So they tried the first one that morning, got him found him guilty. The jury gave him, it seemed like it was 45 years. It was a good stiff sentence. He got, I believe it was 45 years. Everyone went to merry way, they went to lunch, came back. The second jury came in, had the trial. The second jury had no idea what the first jury did or anything. They found him guilty and gave him 45 years. Well, took him over there and put him in the jailhouse. It'd be several days before we got the papers prepared to deliver him to the penitentiary. And that night I got a phone call of a drunk driver. I went out on the highway. I was back just a two-lane highway out here. Matter of fact, the highway came right through in front of the courthouse. It didn't even have the bypass built at that time. I caught the drunk driver, brought her back up here, and the first thing I know is I had a key to the jail door, and I noticed the door was unlocked. I thought that was rather odd. I came on in, and the door coming from downstairs was unlocked and standing open. I went on upstairs and had one prisoner up there, and I noticed the cell doors was open. And I said, what's going on? He said, oh, those two Alabama guys escaped. And I was rather flabbergasted over that. I couldn't have figured everything is standing open, nothing is locked up. And anyway, they had gone. Matter of fact, their automobile had still been parked here. They'd got their property back, they got the keys out, they drove the car off, they was gone. So I knocked on the door and woke Homer up and said, Homer, we got a problem. And told him what had happened, and he said, oh, I said, we need to call the Rangers in on this. This is bad. I said, they're state prisoners and they've escaped. And he said, no, we're not going to call anybody. He said, that 45 years that's too expensive, too long a sentence and just too expensive. Said, just forget it. We're not even going to report this escape. And that's exactly what happened. That was the end of the story. We never did put it out on any. Of course, there was no radio communications back in those days anyway. So I guess they went back to Alabama and lived happily ever after, because we've never heard anything else out of them.